Welcome to the Rotary Club of Jonesboro, home of the five-time consecutive Club of the Year, and we're going to work on it again this year. So, inspirational moment. Success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. That's from Robert Collier, who is an American author. Okay, now for our program, Norm Stafford will introduce our guests today.
Most of us have a general sense of the services CASA provides our community. But if you're like me, you're a little less clear on what services the organizations provide to foster children after they have come out of the system, after they have aged out. Today, we have two speakers who will enlighten us about that aspect of CASA's services, Jeremy Irvin and Michael Graham. Jeremy's background is really an amazing story, and I'm going to make this comment with his permission, so you don't think I'm just giving background without telling. He served time in prison and is a recovering addict, but he's been sober since March 26, 2012. I tell you this because he's turned his life around completely. He's been with CASA for 5 years and is presently the Advocate Coordinator for Greene and Clay Counties and the Training Supervisor for 5 counties. Jeremy is also a CrossFit coach to adults at risk, and a CrossFit coach, that's hard to say, of adults and at-risk youth. As you will see when he comes up, fitness is important to him, and although he considers himself a foodie, he weighs his dietary intake and is on a quest to find a business jacket that fits. While I've known Jeremy for only a short time, I've known Mike Graham for 40 years, and I can tell you this, he needs to watch his dietary intake. I know this because he and I played on a softball team for 20 years, and I saw how he could pack it away at the post-team picnics. We also have something else. Mike says that he is, well, I'm going back to something else. Mike was on the softball team. He was one of the best players on the team. I wasn't. You might think that I was being modest about that I might have aged out. But the truth is I was hit by a line drive that broke my wrist because I couldn't get my hand up in front of it fast enough. But back to Mike. He came to CASA after retiring as a mortgage workout executive for 38 years. He brought his collaboration and communication skills to CASA, first as a volunteer, then as an advocate coordinator for Poinsett County. His favorite pastime is winning Wednesday night trivia, and he thinks he's pretty good at it. As Ernest Hemingway said, "Isn't it pretty to think so?" Mike and Jeremy, please.
If you let yourself go, that's on the other side. Okay. Yeah, I did play softball with Norm. Norm was a good teammate, and he exaggerates my skills. They're all gone now. But we had a softball team consisting of a lot of Arkansas State University faculty members. So we were a bunch of geeks trying to play a sport, and eventually we got pretty good. We kept sneaking grad students into our lineup. Anyway, I'm Michael Graham. My wife may be more well-known in town. She's an upholsterer. I'll leave it right there. I retired 8 years ago from my previous job as a mortgage lender and field representative for Walter Mortgage Company, which doesn't exist anymore. I guess I ruined that company. However, once I retired, I found myself a lot of time on my hands. I looked around, I heard an ad, and volunteered for CASA because I liked courtroom drama. and I like kids. And I thought, wow, that puts the two of them together. And I went through training. I had cases in Craighead and Mississippi County and Poinsett County. And after a while, they hired me. And I wasn't looking for a job at the time, but they were looking to fill a spot. They had all ladies, and they thought it would be nice to have a gentleman in there. And instead, they settled on me. Let me know if I get to be funny or not. Once I got in there, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no background, but I'm good at educating myself. And I came to know the job skills that are needed to be a CASA staff member. And it's mostly just interacting with people and being able to interact with kids. And the highest skill of all is being able to have a back and forth discussion with an attorney. And I got to be pretty handy at that too. CASA introduced me to the fact that kids out in foster care really need somebody. And I don't know if I entered it thinking that I would be so helpful, but it turns out I am. And then as time went on, I began to supervise volunteers. And now I've been doing this for 6 years and having the best time I ever had. I think I wasted 38 years working for that mortgage company. I did want to introduce my colleague, Jeremy. He is a great guy to work with. We joined about the same time. He works Greene County, I do Poinsett, but we interact a lot with Craighead County. And I did want to mention one other thing as part of my background. My son was past president of the morning Rotary, Patrick Graham. And he was never so glad to pass on the presidency this year after a year of COVID. But I did get to address that August group, the morning Rotary, and my son introduced me, and I was quite proud of that. Here's Jeremy.
Thank you, Michael. So yes, everybody's, I get invited to speak and do things like this sometimes. I fear what happens is several topics come up. And so I've seen a lot of interest in my past. There's a lot of interest in what I do for a living. So to go back a little bit, I am a retired drug dealer and drug addict. It is not CASA policy to seek out drug dealers and drug addicts to advocate for children. But I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I ended up involved with them. I consider myself blessed that there's second chances. And just beyond blessed in the idea that so many things had to come together for me to end up in a position I am. So I am your classic story of I used my first drugs when I was 8 years old. My father gave me my first 3 ounces of meth when I was 15. Went to jail and prison all my life until I was in my early 30s. I've been sober since March 26th of 2012 because that's the day they let me out of prison. And I don't count the time while I was in prison. So I've actually been sober since 2011. So having been through all that and been a child through abuse and many other things, I never got to go to foster care. I never got to have a caseworker or a CASA or anything else like that. So when I came home and I became sober, it wasn't good enough for me to pat myself on the back and be excited about being sober. And then as I thought more of like how I wanted to help and where I could help, it became about children for me. I wanted to help them before it was too late, before they ended up in their 30s, trying to figure out credit and what's important in life and what it means to be a good person. I wanted to help them learn that earlier. So I started a weightlifting program that taught kids at the high school in different places that were already struggling. If they did certain things and passed certain things, they got to come work out at my gym for free and hang out. And that's where CASA found me. I have no violent convictions, and that's huge for why I get to be in my position. So eventually, after volunteering, like Mikey did, about 6 months, I got to transition over to being a supervisor. I've been a supervisor with CASA for 5 years. Eventually, we all used to share teaching the classes, all the new volunteers that came in, and they decided that I could teach them all. And it turns out that I love teaching. You know, and that's one of the hard parts about being a drug addict is you never actually get to see or experience or play with the things that you might love or be good at. So I'm fortunate, very fortunate to be in this program and do all that. So very blessed in that. Like I said, there's a lot of topics. I am not shy. I do not shy away from talking about my past. If anybody's interested in that or has an addict in their life they need help with, I'm here anytime to talk to. But today, what we want to talk about is these older children and youth, or in foster care, the youth that are getting older, the youth that have gave up on being adopted and different things like that, which is sad to even let come out of your mouth, right? And the great things that Arkansas has to offer. So Mikey's going to touch on that a little bit about what Arkansas does different for those kids. And then I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about what CASA is doing to kind of add into that and to kind of bolster it, take it up to another level and do as much as possible. And I'll also get into what you guys can do to help us with that. So, Mikey.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, I've been involved with kids that have turned the age of 14. So what DHS offers, and I'm going to brag on DHS, which is sometimes a rare thing, but the Department of Human Services that I work with in Poinsett County is really top of the line. They are very passionate about caring for kids. They don't just phone it in. They really work hard, and I've found a lot of friendships there. Transitional Youth Services is for children that are 14 and they're in the foster care system. And this is a time, if you all can reflect back when you were that age, that your brains aren't quite working well and they're still developing and you're trying to figure out how to sort the world out. Well, Transitional Youth Services, which we've changed to Building Better Futures, kind of like that. But what they offer, DHS offers, is if you're 14 or older, you have access to services. And of course, all the children are different. There's different characteristics of all the children. And what we try to do is teach them life skills so that when they go out in the world, if they're still in foster care, when they emerge, that they have the skill sets necessary to survive. And what is the Department of Human Services interested in is their safety and well-being and being able to carry on as adults. But at the same time, the transitional plan wants them to have their freedom and support that they can go to a DHS person and find out how they can move from one situation to the next. Also in this group is the CASA volunteer. You have teachers, mentors, therapists that have previously worked with the children. I put in coaches and ministers because they're very important in a child's life. So once they turn 14, we start focusing on training them for the future. The plan focuses on schools, job, healthcare, housing, and more. It includes things like documents, birth certificates. They have never had possession of that before. And social security card, and make sure they have a social security number. These things are sometimes neglected because of the fact they're in foster care and the homes they are coming from don't have these details. Also, their school records, all these things that you'll need once you become an adult. The caseworker that works with the Transitional Youth Services is building a plan for this child. But also they want the child to know that they can reach out to the family service worker and get information from them. But it's all about a team effort. There's also the fact that once you turn 18, you can stay in foster care. And a lot of my job has been talking to kids that are 16 and 17 years old that are in foster care, and they can't wait to get out on their own, even though they completely lack any kind of skills on knowing how to do that. They're just looking for freedom. They're looking for getting out from under the thumb of the man, so to speak. The man is DHS and their foster parents. But what we want to talk them into is a more workable plan that gives them their own space and provides them with what's necessary to exist in the adult world. There's also, once they turn 18, DHS offers you a chance to go to school and a chance to support you if you choose to work. So what does this amount to? Well, it actually amounts to about $5,000 a year. And that's real money. You put it on the table and it's something they didn't have before. And there's very little difference between when they turn 18 and have no support and they turn 18 and they have this much money, plus all the mentors and teachers that are in back of them. I have personally worked with a lot of children in this capacity and found it very rewarding. I mean, we're talking about things like going to a car repair shop and knowing what to ask for and what to deal with and things like that. But most of all, it's about independent living and having the freedom. CASA has decided that there is a lot more to it than that. And this is where Jeremy, our executive director, we got two Jeremys, have come up with a program called Building Better Futures. And this is what Jeremy's going to talk to you about now.
Thank you, Mikey. We used to have 7 Jeremys between volunteers and everything else. So we're actually doing much better now. And he's Jeremy Biggs. So me being the little guy, call him Biggs. So what we have found, and it's not a knock on DHS at all. We support DHS 100%. We always want people to be clear about that. There's a lot of people against DHS, but it's part of being that government entity. It's part of being that state-run situation. Everybody can always knock and comment and say everything else, but those people are working themselves to death out there. Literally turnover nonstop. There's a lot going on out there that makes it hard for them to do their jobs. It's just not an easy business to be in. So what happens a lot with these older youth is even though all this stuff is available, it doesn't always get communicated to them very well. And the scenario of the way that looks is if you're a caseworker that has 40 kids to look out for, and 30 of them or 35 of them are children and babies and kids that have just recently came out of an abusive situation. And you've got 5 or more, maybe 10, that have been in care for years, that are in a stable house, that are settled, right? It's really easy for those kids to get less of the attention. And that's where we're wanting to step it up and make sure that these kids know everything that they have offered to them, okay? One of the ways we're going to do that is the Transitional Youth Services, which is a complete DHS program. That's not us. We're coming in with Building Better Futures on top of that program to educate these kids about what all those options are. So one of the main ways we're going to do that is they have a monthly class that they go to. And we're being allowed to step in and run the curriculum on that and to work on that stuff. Now, when we were asked to talk about this, this is a brand new program. We haven't even done the first class yet. It is looking to be scheduled in September. I think I'm going to teach that one just to introduce CASA to some of these kids. We have Jeremy Biggs, our executive director, has wrote some grants so we can maybe up the game on food, because I don't know about y'all, what y'all know about kids, but they aren't always interested in talking about finances and budgeting and things like that. Some of them could care less about college and everything else. They don't even think it's an option. After September, we're looking to layer in each month. There's going to be 2 classes. So we split it from 14 to 17 and then 18 to 21. We'll do one class one Tuesday and another class next Tuesday. We meet on Thursday with DHS to finalize that schedule. Okay. Once we teach that class, we're looking at finance. We're looking at bringing a gynecologist in for the ladies to talk about health and what's important. Obviously, I'm not going to teach that class. We're looking at simple stuff. We're going to take them to a laundromat. Make sure we're cleanliness. I think we take for granted what we teach our children and don't even realize it. We stick with them until they're 25 or older and buying a home. We stick with them while they go through college. We stick with them while they buy their first car or their second car or I've got a 23-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 2-year-old. I'm pretty sure I dedicate the same amount of attention to all 3 of them. It's just a little different on what I'm teaching them. And that's kind of what we're looking at. So we're talking about cooking classes. We're talking about basic bills. So people involved in electrical and different things like that, teaching these kids how to walk into the light company, deposits, things like that. It's a whole list of stuff like that. So finance, credit. These kids have no idea what credit is. And I don't know a better time to get them started talking about it than around 16 and on, right? So that's really where we're wanting to layer that in. And that's where we really need a lot of help. We don't want to teach all this ourselves. We want to bring community members in. We want to bring people in like you guys that know about these topics and know a lot more about it than I do. I'm going to sit in the class and hope I learn too. We're going to take it just further and further. Anything like that we can help with, anything you guys can think of. We're going to go to a mechanic shop and teach them how to change tires and what oil change and how to maintain that expensive car they just bought instead of letting it crumble underneath them and having to reinvest in something that they've already paid all that money for. So I'm sure I'm forgetting a few things, but I'd like to open it up for some questions and stuff like that. That's really the main part of it. And really, we really want to push for community members to come involved. So if anybody wants to get involved, grab me afterwards, get an email, anything like that, and we'll kind of push you towards that stuff and get moving on that. Like I said, it's a brand new program. So we're hoping it's going to grow and we're going to be able to do more and more with these kids and helping them learn what they need to know for the future.
Jeremy, how many of the kids that you see, 16, 17, 18, how many of those, what percentage do you think are interested in going to school, whether it be, well, with me, it's like a community college, or used to be called VOTEC, or actually going to ASU or someplace like that? And what helps them to finance that? I know you mentioned $5,000, but where do they go from there?
Okay, the question is about college and the interest and what these kids do and where the money and different things come from. So with the TYS program, Mikey threw that 5,000 out there. So that's kind of a general statement. There's 1,000 for a computer. There's 1,000 for an apartment. It breaks down more complicated than we could even talk about in this next moment. Sometimes our topics that people want us to talk about could take up an hour in themselves. But that's kind of the point. One of the things I didn't mention, because like I said, there's a whole list, is we were wanting people from the college to come in, educators to come in and talk about options with these kids. So my fear is that I would say that majority of these kids, it's not that they're not interested in college. They truly believe that they can't go. I mean, and that's it. They have nobody like you guys were for your kids, like I'm trying to be for my kids, that said, hey, you can go to college and this is how it's going to happen. And so our goal is to go tour some of these colleges to kind of look. A lot of them ASU may be out of reach a little bit. It just kind of depends on finances and things like that. But Black River's not, all these community colleges are not, and we're going to want to tour all these places. We might bring somebody like you guys in that have worked in the education area and talk about those different grants and things like that. And that's the hope, is that through this program, we up that number of kids that say, you know what, I can go to college and this is where I want to go. And so, and then FAFSA, we're going to bring FAFSA in and have, I know trios around and different people. I plan to contact them. So we're wanting to bring somebody in that sits down with these kids and fills all that stuff out. And so as part of the TYS thing, they have to do all that first. So they have to get every grant, the scholarship money, the lottery money, they have to get all that they can. And then DHS has layers that come in behind that to fill all that up. And so when they move into an apartment, they get a one-time, I think it's $1,000 to buy furniture, silverware. I mean, these kids have nothing when they move into an apartment. They get a laptop purchased within a certain amount of money. They can get car insurance reimbursed. I mean, so the $5,000 is just kind of a general statement. There's a whole layer of things. I don't know how many of you paid your kids' car insurance for a number of years. But the hard part is these kids have to go get the insurance themselves. They have to save the money and go get that. And that's the way a lot of this stuff is. They have to have a month's deposit and a month's rent saved up already. And then DHS will pay for part of it to get them into the apartment. But they have to prove that they're going to be able to keep the apartment. And so when it comes to college and all that things, that's kind of what we're trying to do is, yeah, it's sad, but most of them don't believe that it's even an option. So when you talk about interest, you have to see something as an option before you can be interested in it. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. And you guys maybe will help us with that. Does that answer? Pretty good. Okay.
A couple of years ago, all the clubs in our district put together $3,000 for 3 scholarships. And the scholarships were to what we used to call a trade school or cosmetology. And one of the women was in nursing school. And that's just money, and that's good. But when you were talking about people like our group and serving and helping, what do you mean by that? Is that an individual basis that, let us say, I had certain skills from that I could talk to the kids about, or is that something that a group can do? How do you, what are you looking for there?
Yes. everything. And so we're looking at giving these kid care packages. We're looking at having packages for when they move into their apartment. We're looking, so if you guys want to get together and build a bunch of care packages, we will get them to kids. If you guys want to hand us money, we will get it to kids. We need you to come teach these classes for us. I learned about credit at 32. Thank God I was so disconnected from life that I didn't have bad credit from being a drug addict, being everything else. So I started at 32. And so we need people. Like, I'm not the guy who's going to teach that class. I've learned my share now, but I'm guessing there's people in this room that know a whole lot more about it than I do. So yeah, we want you to teach classes.
Just one other point. You mentioned the advisors, and they technically end being advisors when they're kids turn 18, or because when we gave out the scholarships, one of the young men was speaking about he would always call his advisor, but he was saying, in essence, I'm not really in the program anymore, but he's still with me. So how long does the advisor keep advising?
That becomes, and so we deal with that with CASA quite a bit. So when a kid steps out of care and closes a case, technically, legally, we have no access to them. Fair enough. But the hope is that you developed a friendship that carries on and on. So that's going to have to be a case by case, some of these kids have been through so much through the DHS system and had so much that they had to report to and people, and they're just done with it. And so we spend a lot of our time just convincing these kids to take advantage of this stuff. So it's definitely a case by case. As far as the TYS program goes, DHS itself needs sponsors. And we're always pushing anywhere you guys can help. If you don't want to help with us, go help with them. These kids need you, and we're not greedy. Basically, once these kids turn 18 and get to do that independent living, they get so foster parents get a board check. They get a payment to them for taking care of that child. When they turn 18 and move out on their own, they get that check themselves, but it is not allowed to be sent directly to them. So what we need is trustworthy, dependable people that we can send that check to that's going to do more than hand it to the kid. We need somebody that's going to go, okay, here's your money. Where are you going next? What are you doing with it? What's your budget look like? Right? What do you plan? Like, what's your electric this month? What's your, stuff we all do to an extent, right? And so that's where those advisors come in quite a bit, is stuff like that.
What numbers are we talking about as far as the number of students you expect in the class and the number of students y'all are dealing with?
It is larger at the 14 to 17 mark, because quite honestly, it's hard to convince a lot of these kids to stay in past 18. And so currently in the 5 counties, we have one DHS caseworker that handles all the kids. Her name's Precious Hell. She's a wonderful caseworker. She handles all the kids that are 18 to 21. And I think what we're talking about is 18 kids, but that's where we're hoping to step in. They're only seeing 6 or 7 kids show up to these classes and take full advantage of a lot of this stuff. And that's where we're hoping to step in. And if nothing else, entice them with some food and get them in there where we can teach them. From there, we're going to really layer in some different things. So for that group, we're talking under 20. And for the 14 to 18 or 14 to 17, it's in the 30 to 40 range. But it's also those that are available. The problem with a lot of those kids, because placement is so hard, we get a lot of those kids placed in facilities and different things out of the area where we can't quite reach them. So we're hoping to change all that too, best we can. Okay. And so every kid in foster care has a caseworker, right? We would love if every kid had a CASA volunteer, and we're working on that. Craighead's doing pretty good. Greene and Poinsett, we need quite a bit of help. Mississippi needs some help. And so once they get into the 14 and above program, so they're not actually in the program till 16 when they start seeing benefits of it. At 14, they start getting taught about what's in that program. At 16, they start seeing some of the benefits, and they really get the benefits at 18. Okay. So we have Sherry Burris, that is the Transitional Youth Services caseworker for our entire area. And so that's on the team. We have a local caseworker that's on the team. Now we're going to have CASA, who's part of that team. It's going to go to all those classes and meet all that. Once they turn 18, they get Precious Hell, who specializes in 18 to 21-year-old. And that's a new position that we're very excited about, because I don't know I mean, I'm sure you guys understand where you go to specialize on a certain topic, it really ups what you can do in that area. And so we're seeing her really know everything that's available and really work well with these kids. So that's most of the team. Am I missing anything?
You know, actually, the judges in this county are really proactive with this. And Judge Mooney is who I've worked with, and there's Judge Bibbs,
Judge Broadway.
Judge Broadway. They all, when the child comes before the court, they are all over trying to encourage them to accept this help and become part of this program. But once a child indicates that they're starting to warm up to this idea, the team, the ad litem, that's the attorney that represents the child, and the officer chief counsel, which is the DHS attorney, they're all there. They're all saying, we'll help you do whatever you want to do. They're excited. Every time a child, a 17-year-old says, I want to go on to college, I want to remain in foster care after I turn 18, they're just, the team is ready to go and they want to help, but we do need these experts in certain fields that to volunteer and jump in there and help us in the training of these children. So it's very important, but the judges in this second judicial district are very, very much in favor of the Department of Human Services, family reunification, and helping kids in foster care. They couldn't hardly be any stronger in their feelings towards that. So the judges.
Yeah, and also so that's the team that's in court, and so they're going to order things, they're going to make things happen, they're going to put stuff in paperwork. The team I'm talking about is who's dealing with them on a daily basis, and then that whole team goes to court, and we get these folks involved. That smaller team meets every 6 months as well, and a mentor or a CASA volunteer or anybody like that can join that meeting, and we talk what you've met, what goals you've accomplished, what your next steps are, things like that. That happens every 6 months until they're 21 or done too. Yeah, so thank you very much. And really, any questions you have, anything you want to get involved in, our website is neacasa.org. There's applications on there to become a volunteer. This program will get added to that eventually. That wonderful picture of me is always up there. My email address, all my contact information, and all of our staff's contact information is there for all of that. So anything, drug addiction, anything we've talked about today, it doesn't just have to be about building better futures. We've got a lot going on. So if you want to get in, you don't have to commit to a 2-year volunteer position. Anything you think you can help with or that you're curious about, just reach out to us and we'll answer your questions. Thank you.
Jeremy and Michael, thank you very much. Very interesting and informative program. Doing excellent work. Okay, thought for the day. Every day may not be good, but there's something good in every day. And that's A.M. Earl. She is an American author. Okay, if there's no other business, we stand adjourned. Thank you.